Today, we're just 2 days away from Black Friday and the official kickoff of the holiday shopping season. Or did that actually happen weeks ago? We dive into how Black Friday isn't really just one day anymore. Plus, with FDA approval for a COVID-19 vaccine hopefully around the corner, all focus has turned to distribution, and more specifically, the super freezer trucks needed to transport and store enough doses for millions of Americans. And finally, Nikola shares sell off as the electric car maker's deal with General Motors remains a question mark. I'm MacKenzie Sigalos, and this is CNBC After Hours. A mixed Thanksgiving Eve for stocks as the Dow and S&P 500 fall from yesterday's all-time highs, while the Nasdaq rises to post its own record close. The Dow's worst performer today? Salesforce. That company is in talks to acquire Slack. Now, while investors retreated from Salesforce shares, they piled into Slack, setting that stock nearly 38% higher today. CNBC.com's Alex Sherman reports that a deal between the two software firms could be announced as soon as next week and would likely pose a formidable threat to the whale of the enterprise tech market, Microsoft. Now, despite its loss today, the Dow is still on pace for its best monthly performance in more than 30 years, since January of 1987, capping off an incredible recovery in stock prices over the last 8 months as Wall Street looks ahead to a post-coronavirus world. Now, much of that optimism is predicated on the belief that a COVID-19 vaccine is imminent, and that within the next several months, most Americans who want it can have access. And while we've gotten a lot of good news from companies like Pfizer and Moderna out of their clinical trials, the next step, mass distribution, is complicated, especially because of how cold these vaccines have to remain as they're shipped and stored across the country. CNBC's Seema Mody dives into some of the companies specializing in what's called cold chain technology.
News of a vaccine may seem like the end of the race, but in reality, it's just the beginning as the focus turns to distribution and delivery. Now, part of the challenge with distribution is keeping the vaccines at ultra-low temperatures. This 53-foot-long Thermo King refrigerator truck can house about 208,000 doses. Inside, it can get down to negative 30 degrees Celsius with dry ice. It can meet the vaccine temperature requirement. Now, Thermo King is a brand of Trane Technologies, a $35 billion company, along with industrial player Carrier. Both are in active discussions with Operation Warp Speed, state and federal officials, pharmaceutical giants, and the third-party logistic players to figure out how they can use their cold storage options for vaccine delivery. The other option are these super freezers that Trane Technologies specializes in, or Thermo King, I should say, 10 to 20-foot standalone containers that are being seen as a viable option for hospitals that don't have the infrastructure to store the vaccine for an extended period of time, or mobile clinics at different states across the nation. But the CEO of Trane Technologies tells me one of the key factors here is ensuring that everyone knows how to handle and manage these containers to ensure the vaccine doesn't spoil.
If you're pulling 1,000 or 5,000 vials, out, deep freeze or out of refrigeration to room temperature, you've got to have the demand right there of that number of people. So you can imagine in a rural setting, you might not have that density of people at one point in time. So you have to be very careful about being able to pull these out in smaller doses, let them thaw, and make sure that you're administering them in the time allotted, which, we think is about 6 hours.
Super freezer is also in high demand in emerging markets in Asia, parts of Latin America, where you have a combination of tropical temperature and poor infrastructure, underscoring the need for these type of facilities, ensuring that the vaccine doesn't spoil. In fact, World Health Organization says on average 25% of vaccines spoil. Therefore, the focus really turning to these industrial companies and third-party logistic players to see what role they will play in ensuring the vaccine stays at the temperature required to ensure people at home can get this vaccine in a safe and effective manner.
Okay, let's get to our sound check. Here's a roundup of the day's biggest action and what the top newsmakers and business leaders had to say on CNBC's airwaves.
We've taken a county by county approach, and we have a very objective criteria. If you as a county have more than 200 cases over a 2-week period, or more than 500 cases per 100,000 residents, then you automatically have additional restrictions put on you.
I think the jobs numbers in some ways are even worse than they look, because in most years, you think you usually have this big boost in jobs when people are doing all this extra work around the holidays, like in retail and all this stuff, and those jobs are not going to be there this year.
It is going to be tight, but we've known that for a while. And I think the retail industry and Bean specifically have been really clear with our customers to shop early to make sure that we're not stressing out our workers in our fulfillment centers and our warehouses, and that we're working in line for us specifically with UPS. So I think that early shopping message has been really clear.
I started getting earlier as pre-seed Series A. And seeing how I can help these companies grow and scale, which is part of my job at the Catalyst Fund as well, looking for underrepresented founders and Latinx, African American, and female founders, and just grooming these companies.
Thanksgiving week also marks the official kickoff of the holiday shopping season. Now, usually just hours after Santa closes out the Macy's parade, retailers open their doors for scores of shoppers looking for bargains on hot-ticket gift items. That largely won't be the case this year. First, there's the coronavirus pandemic, which still maintains a tight grip on much of the country and may likely get worse in the wake of millions traveling to see family. But there's also a redefinition of the holiday shopping season currently underway, which is certainly COVID-related. Stores aren't holding their best deals for Black Friday and instead have been rolling out deep online discounts all month. According to Adobe Analytics, consumers have already spent more than $58 billion online since November 1st. That's a 32% jump since November of 2019, and it averages out to nearly $2 billion a day. That online spending is projected to jump to an average of $3 billion a day this week. Now, with that in mind, CNBC.com reporter Melissa Repko can break down what Black Friday will actually look like in 2020.
When we think of Black Friday, we often think of people lined up outside of stores and rushing into stores, shoulder to shoulder in aisles, looking for the best deals. This year, that will be very different. A lot of the Black Friday shopping will be invisible to us because it'll be online, or it'll be done in a parking lot where people pick up their gifts by curbside. The start of the holiday season was pushed up quite a bit this year. We saw a lot of retailers start what they even called Black Friday sales back in October. And so that's really moved up the timetable. The timetable usually starts on Thanksgiving Day, when a lot of retailers would open their doors in the evenings and let people who had just eaten their turkey dinner come in and start shopping and get a jump start on the next day's Black Friday deals. This year, on the other hand, a lot of retailers will keep their doors shut on Thanksgiving and have even delayed the start of Black Friday in-store sales. So they're opening later than usual, and this is all intended to push sales online and stretch out those sales so that retailers are not as strained with their supply chain. They can get packages to people in time, and they can also try to diminish the chance of having a huge crowd that's harder for them to control in the store. Black Friday sales really depend on the retailer, and so there will be unique deals on Black Friday at some retailers in the stores. Walmart, for example, broke up its Black Friday into 3 separate events, with a piece of it that was in the store and a piece of it that was online. But they're trying to promote different items to try to make people come back time and again for different items. So there will be a freshness to it at some retailers on the day of Black Friday. The big question is, will the shoppers show up? Will we see the kinds of crowds we've seen before? Consumers are weighing a number of different competing realities. So on the one hand, there are people who have lost their jobs during this time and perhaps had a pay cut, or dealt with illness in their family that may tamp down on their enthusiasm for shopping for gifts. On the other hand, a lot of retailers are getting a bounce because people are spending their money differently. So instead of traveling or even being able to visit a loved one this season, they're going to be able to spend more of that money on a gift and perhaps send that in the mail to their parents or a sister. So the National Retail Federation, a major trade group, has actually projected that spending will rise this year. There's also a dynamic where people can't spend on experiences anymore. So experiential gifting, giving someone a day at the spa or a Broadway show ticket, was was really popular in years past. That is virtually impossible in the pandemic world. And so that makes people look at other categories, perhaps like buying a perfume or a makeup item or a new sweater.
Okay, time for today's numbers round. Let's kick it off with 170. U.S. travelers are buying 170% more insurance policies on their Thanksgiving trips compared to the same time period in 2019, according to industry website Squaremouth. Now, 40% of all Thanksgiving travelers searched for policies that would cover coronavirus-related interruptions. The uptick in trip protection comes as more than 3 million people pass through domestic airports over the weekend, despite CDC advice to just stay home for the holiday. Next, 1,700. Sticking with air travel for this one, Delta Airlines has struck a deal to avoid furloughs next year that would have affected 1,700 pilots. The labor union voted to allow Delta to lower pilots' guaranteed hours by as much as 5%. The agreement comes after more than 70,000 airline industry jobs have been cut in 2020, including roughly 30,000 involuntary layoffs. And finally, $2 billion. Shares of electric vehicle company Nikola tumbled lower today after its CEO didn't exactly reassure investors that its banner $2 billion deal with General Motors will still go through. Now, you remember Nikola, the potential Tesla competitor that went public via SPAC earlier this year, saw its stock skyrocket, signed a deal with auto industry giant GM, and then lost its founder and chairman after he stepped down following a fraud investigation from both the Department of Justice and the SEC. It's the same Nikola that, to date, has yet to produce a car or nearly any revenue. Well, that big GM deal hasn't gone through yet, and the Nikola CEO didn't really give a definitive answer when Jim Cramer asked him about it on CNBC last night. You can check out that non-answer in the clip posted to CNBC.com and on the CNBC app. That's it for After Hours. We're off the next 2 days for the Thanksgiving holiday, but after that, we'll be back here in our home office every Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. So have a great holiday and be sure to catch us next week.